Okay.
Yeah, you ready?
hmm
Leave a comment or a like if you think Madi should be able to have a cat. Thank you.
Hi everybody, this is Jared from the Broken Seal, and today we're going to be going over how to set up and play Kemet Blood and Sand. Kemet Blood and Sand is Matagot's latest edition of Kemet, with updated rules and mechanics for 2 to 5 players and roughly 90 minutes playtime. In the game, you take control of one of 5 Egyptian deities, as you attempt to gain power using your armies. Doing various things during the game award players fame points, and the player with the most fame points at the end of the game wins. So first we're going to look at how to set up the game for 2 players. Then we're going to look at the day phase, the night phase, and win conditions. So first, setup. Depending on how many players you're going to play with, the board looks a little different. Like I said, we're going to be setting up for 2 players. So our board looks like this. We can't blink out what this will look like, obviously, but reference the diagram in the beginning of the book, rule book, and you'll be able to see. For instance, for ours, we're only going to be focusing on the left part of the board and this middle section here, and we're going to ignore this section here. Next, each player selects one of the Egyptian deities. In the base game, there are 5 available. Next, each player selects the deity they want to use. The deities are similar except for the artwork and the color that they have. So today we're going to be setting up black and yellow. Then, depending on the color you chose, you're going to grab all of the available miniatures, action points, prayer point tracker, as well as round tracker. You're also going to want to grab the battle cards that match your chosen color. There'll be a little border on the side of the triangle for the battle card that you're going to be using. So for instance, this will be for the black character. Next, determine the power tiles that you're going to be using. In a 2-player game, you choose 2 different power tiles at random and set them on the side of the board. Return the other unused power tiles back to the box. They're not going to be used during the game. Note that when you're in a 2-player game, you remove the active god tile powers, as well as any tile powers that have duplicate artwork. This way there's only 1 tile power available for each of those options. This leaves you with 26 different power tiles to use throughout the course of the game. Next, you're going to look over your power tiles and you're going to place any creature miniatures on those tiles available for when they're purchased, if they're purchased. You're also going to want to look to see if any of your power tiles give you special battle cards. If they do, set them aside so that when they're purchased, the battle card can go to the player that purchased them. Next, you're going to place divine fame points on the tiles that give them. So for instance, the Sphinx, if it's being used, it gives you 1, as well as the domination cards for each color. Place remaining fame tokens, veteran tokens, and gold and silver tokens available in the supply for everyone to access. Next, you're going to give each player the Diversion Divine Intervention card. Return all unused Diversion Divine Interventions back to the box. They won't be used during this game either. Finally, you're going to shuffle all the remaining Divine Intervention cards together and set them to the side. Now that we have the board set up, let's look at individual player setup. Each player is going to choose a city. In our 2-player game, we have the northern city and the southern city available. Once a player chooses their city, they place their statue marker in that city to show that it's theirs. Then, each player takes the corresponding buy a token tile and places it on their board. For today's game, we have blue and black available to be purchased, so we find the blue and black power tiles, buy a power tiles, and place them onto our board. Each player then draws 2 Divine Intervention cards and places them in their area. Note that these 2 Divine Intervention cards are not revealed to the rest of the players, these are kept secret. So while everyone knows that everyone starts with at least 1 diversion, the other 2 cards are random to start with. Then you're going to take your 6 pyramid parts. If you were playing with more players, you would have up to 9 pyramid parts, but in a 2-player game, you only have 6. And you're going to place them in your city in districts, and then you're going to have up to 3 levels in your pyramids. So that will allow you to have 1 level 1 and 1 level 2. Keep in mind that during this phase, you can have no more than a level 2 pyramid to start. Next, you're going to place your units. You're going to place the units in groups of 5, which makes up 1 troop, and you can place them in 2 different districts in your city. The remaining 2 units are going to be kept in your supply. Finally, in reverse order, each player is going to buy 1 power tile at level 1. If I were the second player, I would take 1, put it into my zone, and then the first player would take theirs and put it into their zone. Now we're going to move on to the day phase. During this turn, players take actions until all 5 action tokens have been used, at which time the day phase ends. Something to note before you start your day phase: by the end of the day phase, you have to have 1 action token on each of the 3 levels. This is the rule of equilibrium. Second thing to note, if at any time during play you gain a gold or a silver token, those tokens are played at the same time as you put another action token down, but it does give you bonus things that you can do. Since there are a lot of different ways that these can happen, you're going to reference the rules or your player aid if those occur, so that way you know what to do. Okay, now that we have all of that out of the way, let's look at the actual actions you can do. On your player board, you'll notice that there's move, recruit, build, prayer, and buy. Starting with pray, this action will give you 2 prayer points. The next actions are buy a power tile. If you place your action token on one of those tiles, you get to buy a power tile corresponding to the color that was placed. If I were to put it on black, since I control level 2 black pyramid, I can buy up to level 2 power tiles for black. You have to control a pyramid equal to the power tiles that you're trying to buy in order to buy it. Some caveats for buying: you can't buy a power tile that has artwork that you already own. So for instance, if this were a larger player game, I couldn't have 2 of these tiles. Once you've chosen the power tile that you're going to buy, you're going to reference the cost in the top left, and you're going to lower your prayer points equal to that cost. If I were to buy a level 2 power tile, I would have to lower my prayer points by 2. So since we start with 7 prayer points, I would go down to 5. If you buy a creature, you immediately place it into one of your districts attached to a troop. Creatures have to be attached to troops. If at any point a creature becomes unattached to a troop, say if the troop is wiped out, then the creature is immediately returned back to your supply. But you can immediately place your creature back onto the field with any attached troop in your district for free on your turn. The Raise a Pyramid action allows you to build one of your pyramids up a certain number of levels. Each level costs the corresponding amount of prayer points to build. So if I were to go from a level 1 to a level 2 pyramid, I would have to spend 2 points. You're also allowed to skip steps. So for instance, if I wanted to go from a level 1 to a level 3, I would pay 5 points for the level 2 pyramid of 2 to a level 3 pyramid of 3 for a total of 5. Also something to note, if you're able to build your pyramid up to level 4, then you acquire a fame point for that. But these fame points are temporary, and you only keep those if you keep control of that pyramid. Our next action is to recruit. When you recruit, you spend X number of power points to get X number of units back onto the field. Those units have to spawn in your district, and they can spawn in 1, 2, or 3 districts as you want. So for instance, if I were to spend 2 power points with my recruit, I could put these 2 units into either a blank district or a district that had fewer than 5 units. Note that a troop is limited at 5 unless you have other cards that allow you to have more. Lastly, we have move. Move allows you to move one of your troops up to the movement value that you have. Troops start with a base movement of 1 land and 1 teleport. Note that these can be taken in any order that you want. So you could teleport and then move, or move and then teleport. Divine interventions as well as power tiles will modify your movement. Creatures can as well, which are also power tiles. Teleporting, unless otherwise specified, allows you to move from a pyramid that you control to any obelisk on the map. Power tiles and divine intervention cards can modify this as well. If you look on the board, you'll notice that there are harbors. The red harbors are military, while the blue harbors are trade harbors. Military harbors allow you to leave and enter into any of the trade harbors, or enter into the military harbor that's adjacent to your city. So for instance, If I were to leave from the military harbor down in the yellow player's area, I could enter into the military harbor at my city. Trade harbors allow you to travel to any trade harbor or specifically to your military harbor of your city. Walls around a city count as one additional movement that you have to overcome. So for instance, for the yellow player to move from this district into this zone, it would require 1-2 movement. When you move into a space that contains an enemy's troops, that immediately triggers combat. We'll go over combat now so you can see what that looks like. So let's say the black player on their turn is going to move into this area where the yellow player already has their troops. This would trigger combat. Battle has 7 steps. The first step is the War Council. During the War Council, the attacker and defender both have 2 cards. One card gets discarded, one card is put face down, and during this phase, either player can play a Divine Intervention card in addition to the card that they're putting face down. Now note, the player does not have to be honest about the fact that they're playing a Divine Intervention. This allows you to kind of bluff your opponent. You can say, yeah, I've played a Divine Intervention, or you can say, no, I haven't. Neither one of those have to be true. The next step is confrontation. At the confrontation step, each player reveals the cards that they played, both battle card and Divine Intervention. Then we move to resolution. The resolution phase is where you add up all of your strength, both on your battle cards, Divine Intervention, units, and your troop, as well as any creatures or power tiles that you have. Whichever player has the highest strength is considered the victor of the battle. After the resolution, you move to casualties. There are 2 types of damage that can happen in this game: unblockable damage and regular damage. Unblockable damage has a black blood drop on it. That means that no matter what the defense is for the opponent, that amount of damage is still going to get through and that person loses that many units. Blockable damage, however, is modified by the defense value of the opponent. In this situation, if opponent played 3 blockable damage but I had no defense available, I would still take 3 damage. Then the rewards are given out. If the attacker wins and has at least 1 troop remaining in the battlefield, then they get 1 battle fame point. If the defender wins, they get 1 veteran token. Next, each player that participated in the battle and didn't get any fame points earns 1 veteran token. This means that the defender has the potential to earn 2 veteran tokens each time they're in a combat. Then we have the loser aftermath. The loser chooses to recall or retreat their units. Retreating just means moving your units from the zone you're in to an adjacent free zone. Recalling, however, means placing those units from the board onto your supply. Recalling does have its benefits though. When you recall, you gain a number of prayer points equal to the units that you recalled minus 1. Next we have the winner aftermath. The winner pretty much has the same options. They can stay in the zone that they pushed into, or they can recall their troops just like the loser. The winner would also gain prayer points just like the loser does. Then in the aftermath, you clean up the battle. The cards that were played gets discarded. The Divine Intervention cards that you played get discarded over in the Divine Intervention. And then if your battle cards are empty, you take all of the discarded battle cards back into your hand and you start anew with those. So we've done all 5 of our actions. Now we're on to the night phase. The night phase follows sequential order every single time the night phase occurs. First, we have an offering. The player who controls the Sanctuary of All Gods may remove 2 units from that troop to gain 1 Divine Fame point. Next, we have the Delta Temple. The player that controls the Delta Temple may remove 1 unit from that troop to gain 5 prayer points. Next, we have Temple Control. Players who control 2 temples earn 1 Divine Fame point. Note that the Delta Temple does not count towards this. Next, we have Adoration. Each player who controls a temple earns the number of prayer points listed on that temple. Note that again, the Delta Temple does not count for this. Then we have our prayer step. Each player gains 2 prayer points and can turn in any veteran tokens they have to earn that number of prayer points. Next, we have Divine Intervention. Each player earns 1 Divine Intervention card in turn order. They can also turn in veteran tokens to earn more. Note that players can turn in veteran tokens to earn 1 additional Divine Intervention card per veteran token turned in. Next is conscription. You can turn in 1 veteran token to earn 1 unit to place onto your board in one of your districts. Note that at this step, if you have any remaining veteran tokens, those are discarded and returned back to the supply. So if you haven't used them by now, you might want to use them now. Next, we have awakening. Each player removes all of their action tokens off of the board so that they can be used again. And finally, destiny. In the destiny phase, each player moves their turn marker down, and then, starting with the player with the lowest amount of fame points, places their tokens into the turn order based off of where they want to go. If there's a tie, the tied player who had the leftmost turn order chooses first, and so on. Now let's look at winning. Once a player has accumulated 9 or more fame points before they place their action on their turn, they win the game. What this essentially means is that once a player hits a point where they have 9 or more, they go into check. All other players get 1 round to be able to respond to that and balance out the points. But otherwise, if that player stays in check, then they win. And that's mostly everything that you need to know how to play Kemet. There are a lot of steps to this game, and it's very easy to make mistakes along the way. I say that because we've made a lot of mistakes. Before we did our recording that will accompany this video, we actually had a lot of mistakes in our 4 games that we had played up until that point. Each game we figured out some mistakes that we were making, corrected them, but ultimately there was just a lot more. That was actually my inspiration for doing this. I wanted to be able to show people how to play the game correctly so that they can potentially play it right. But that's all for today. Like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome content. Bye.